If ever there was a game that was a product of its time, it's this one. Hello and welcome back to the Persona Retrospective. Next up is the second part of the Persona 2 duology, Persona 2 Eternal Punishment. Unlike Innocent Sin, Eternal Punishment was also released outside of Japan, having been released a year after Innocent Sin. You might be thinking, what's different? Well, let's dive in and find out. The core gameplay hasn't changed. You still have your 5 characters, each of which being able to use different personas and attacks, as well as use items and defend. You can also still control the order of your attacks to create strategies or use fusion attacks. Characters also still move around the battlefield, making the action feel alive, which is great as the gameplay was already so good. The new music tracks they added are also pretty good, with the main callouts for me being the map screen, as well as the ending song, which has lyrics. Graphically, there have been some slight improvements, but it's not drastically different. You can mainly see this with the new dungeons. While there are some new dungeons here, the majority are the same places you have visited in Innocent Sin, such as Aoba Park and the abandoned factory. I will say that the layouts for these have changed though, so it's just a familiar look. The new dungeons you go through are pretty cool, a few examples being the lab and the ship. Dungeon exploration in general is also the same, having 2 maps you can switch between, a compass to guide you, and the ability to swing the camera around with the triggers. The biggest noticeable gameplay change for me was demon negotiations. Gone are multiple options per character. Now everyone has one action they can use. This makes it so you aren't as much remembering what dialogue option per character gets the result you want, but brings the focus on what individual character or combination of characters get you the effect. This streamlines demon negotiations, making them a lot easier, which is great, right? Well, not quite. By making this easier, they have, in my opinion, removed personality from the characters. Take Lisa from Innocent Sin for example. From her dialogue options, we got to know more about her, from her love of kung fu to her more performative side. While compared to Katsuya for example, all we learn is what we already know, that he's a good detective, investigating and interrogating. Yeah, more options made it harder to get green or yellow, as it was a lot more trial and error, but I liked having them as an option, just to see more of each character's personalities. A recurring thing for me you'll see throughout the game is streamlining mechanics having a knock-on effect with wider implications. Another example is with the sweepstakes. In Innocent Sin, you had one sweepstake option, with rumors affecting what you win and how rare it is to win. In Eternal Punishment, this has been split out into 3 different sweepstakes, with rumors just affecting what prizes are. For example, choosing between winning weapons or winning armor. This, in theory, is an improvement, as you can choose what to spend your money on. The issue is, unless you go out of your way to get money from headhunting, which is a new feature they added where you get money for finding people in the overworld, you won't have enough money to stock up on items, buy weapons and armor, and max out all 3 sweepstakes with how expensive everything can be. Sure, you can still enter without max entries, but your chances of winning go down. With the game being so similar to Innocent Sin, the big change is with the story. Here is your spoiler warning. I'll be talking about the characters and plot in a little bit more detail, so skip to the time shown on screen now to avoid any spoilers. The concept of eternal punishment came together during the writing for Innocent Sin, as scriptwriter Tadashi Satomi felt like the story needed an alternative viewpoint from that of the main character in Innocent Sin. As such, the main characters for Eternal Punishment were added into Innocent Sin as minor characters. Our main team this time around include Maya, returning from Innocent Sin, this time as the main character, Maya's roommate Ulala, Baofu, a suspicious rumor mongerer, Katsuya, who is Tatsuya's older brother, either Ellie or Nate from Persona 1 for a good chunk of the game, and finally Tatsuya himself, who eventually rejoins your team. This leaves Maya and Tatsuya as the only playable characters to return from Innocent Sin. With the main cast other than Tatsuya being adults, we do get a more mature view on the events of the game, making it stand out from other Persona games that follow. We have a lot more death and gruesome transformations here to tie in with the maturity of the game. While I prefer the original Masquerade kids, the new characters are all really good and well written. Katsuya essentially goes on a journey of having to portray everything he knows and was taught about the justice system, turning a more black and white world grey, to truly understand what justice means to him. Baofu is the biggest mystery of the team, keeping his cards close to his chest, but ultimately, you come to understand that he is fighting his self-guilt after his wife was killed, making him become bitter and untrusting. Ulala is the most normal of the group. She has an inferiority complex which consumes her at one point, but past that, she is just freaked out by everything that is happening in this crazy world. Tatsuya is basically how he was in Innocent Sin, but now he has a voice. Unlike the rest of the Masquerade kids, he couldn't forget what happened, so transferred himself to the Tatsuya of this side, as they call it, keeping his memories. Maya's character is also relatively unchanged, being the happy go-getter, but by becoming a mute main character, she unfortunately loses a lot of her personality. The original Persona cast play a much bigger role here than they did in Innocent Sin. The P1 cast have their original Western names, but keep their original Japanese designs. Yuki returns but is a very minor character here, with the plot separating Maya and Yuki at the start. Both Ellie and Nate have different plot elements depending on who you choose. I went with Nate in my playthrough, so I also got to see Guido return. As with the theme of rumors becoming a reality, a rumor of Guido being alive is the reason he is here, and it's cool to see him, but ultimately it doesn't lead to much. Guido, despite being remorseful at the end of Persona 1, is back to being a villain because it's too late to change. Yeah, it's thrown in here for nostalgia's sake more than anything. They try to play it off as Guido being some sort of anti-hero, the shadow to Nate's light, but I don't buy Guido as a redeemed character, basically cursing the main villain for using him despite his destined fate. We do get to see the original and canon version of Naoya here, which is pretty cool, as it's the first time a Western audience would have seen this version of him in a Persona game. The main plot of this game is honestly very similar to Innocent Sin. Both stories involve a Joker causing bad things to happen, although here it's Joker with an A at the end, rather than an actual person called the Joker. Both games involve an evil organization. Instead of the Masquerade, it's the New World Order. Both games also have very similar pacing, as well as having the same main villain across both games, pulling the strings. The big overarching narrative is how the side from Innocent Sin is bleeding into the side of Eternal Punishment, allowing Nyarlathotep to return and overpower Philemon. As part of this, you'll be shown the events of Innocent Sin throughout the game through flashbacks. This, for me, is where the bizarreness of this game comes into play. From the perspective of a Western audience of the time, you would have essentially have been spoiled on what happens in Innocent Sin without ever having the chance to experience it firsthand. As a result, you miss out on a lot of enjoyment of the game, essentially missing one half of the story. There is a lot of little interactions here and there where, unless you have played Innocent Sin before or are doing a second playthrough, you will just miss out on entirely. A good example being the scene where Maya feels a pain in her chest, which is due to her memory bleed or being stabbed in that same spot from Innocent Sin's side. Eternal Punishment does have some issues though, mostly related to its age. My biggest issue is how slow the game is. As I mentioned in my Innocent Sin review, due to the flow of the game, I didn't experiment with the other personas. Well, that has been addressed here. With Philemon basically gone this whole game, you will not be given any upgraded personas. This means you have no choice but to make use of the Velvet Room. But this reveals the cracks in this system. Every persona has 8 ranks to max them out, and every character can use different personas. To be able to recruit personas, you need to get a certain number of tarot cards, with enemies dropping more cards the further you get into the game. On paper, this doesn't sound too bad, but my god does this take a long time to do. So here's an average scenario for me. I find the 5 personas I want to use from Igor's list. Then I head into an optional dungeon. For me, this was Kasugayama High School, more specifically, the bunker. Next, I head into the highest gated room I'm able to, and from there, I find 2 demons from 2 separate fights and make contracts with them. Next, I run back and forth getting 3 tarot cards from these 2 demons to use on whatever tarots I need. Once I have enough tarot cards, I make the personas I need. But now I need to level them up to get more moves, so I head back into the bunker to level up the 5 new personas. This whole process can take hours to do, and that's with a speed up. On top of this, you will need to switch personas after every couple of dungeons or so, as you get access to higher level persona, so you will find yourself doing this loop fairly often. This just slows down the game to a crawl. There are ways you can help speed this up, such as using skill cards to give persona moves to be able to use them in a new dungeon, leveling them up as you go through it, using fusions and mutations. But even that can be tedious. You can unlock a skill card shop that has basic skill cards. To get more cards added into his inventory, you need to register them. You lose the cards in the process, and the really good cards you register are expensive to buy back. Now, how do you get good cards, you may be asking? Well, there are quite a few ways. Defeated enemies can randomly drop spell cards, which you'll get a lot of doing this persona grind. You can also find them in dungeon chests. There is also one new way through a sketchy man named Salem. Salem, after spreading a rumor, will give you blank maps and he'll ask you to map out dungeons. The reward he gives you are really good and arguably worth the effort, but to map a dungeon, you need to get every single tile revealed on the map across all floors. This further slows the game down for me, as these dungeons can get really large and towards the end of the game be filled with annoying traps such as pitfalls, which needlessly pads out the game exploring them, especially with some dungeon exits being very easy to find, like the one in Smile Mall. Fusions are a really good way of getting levels on multiple personas, with trio fusions in particular getting 3 characters' personas leveled up at the same time. Ending a fight with a fusion move gives you a chance of a mutation happening. These mutations mainly increase the stats of your persona, but if you're leveling up a persona, they can increase their rank by 2. This is great, but again, due to the game's age, slows it down. After every fight, you have to wait while the word mutation in big yellow letters slides up the screen, and from there, you'll get an animation of the persona appearing, followed by the upgrade. While very minor, this takes a good 10-20 seconds. Now pair this with a level up and it becomes even longer. As you go into the late game, you'll most likely be doing non-stop AoE fusion attacks, basically ending every fight with a fusion move. These 10-20 seconds eventually adds up and again slows everything down, especially with every character dropping one-liners after every fight.
Endure a blow and administer 2. That's the secret of battle.
The rumor system, while technically unchanged, I personally think has less impact here. A lot of the rumors are more bigger picture rumors, such as with the Rose Candida worker being swept away, giving you the option to buy a unique armor. There are still options on what shops sell, but that is a lot less common due to the high variety of shops here. I found that there were only 2 weapon shops and 2 armor stores, and that was pretty much it. Lastly, there is a huge stretch of the game where you basically fight the same boss 3 times in the span of 4 fights, which is pretty much the halfway point of the game. You fight Ulala Joker possessed, then you fight Noriko Joker possessed, then you get a break with Demon Sugimoto, and then you fight Ginji Joker possessed. The Joker's persona moves don't change, so what's different between each fight is what the other enemies are in the fight alongside what the individual user's moves are. But these are so minor that it feels like the same fight 3 times, with all of them using Old Mate. Noriko is the most different, with her charming your party as her whole game plan. Overall, I'm very mixed on Eternal Punishment, which is a real shame as I loved Innocent Sin. While having the same great combat and a lot more love for Persona 1, the game's age unfortunately drags it down, with its old school jrpg game design being very noticeable. Eternal Punishment has some decent difficulty up until the endgame, where the fusion move between the ultimate personas basically makes this game a cakewalk, also mutating these personas to max stats in the process. The game also has really good replayability. After beating the game, you can play through it again, this time choosing between Nate or Ellie's route, depending on whichever one you didn't choose the first time around. After finishing that second playthrough, you will get access to the Extra Dungeon, a unique dungeon that has you going through various floors in Seven Sisters High School, with rooms bringing you to various places from Innocent Sin. The biggest issue for Eternal Punishment would have been at launch. With Innocent Sin not being available in the West, Eternal Punishment spoils Innocent Sin. Which is unfortunate, as I think going into Innocent Sin and then playing Eternal Punishment gives you another layer of appreciation for it, with all the various references it has. This also has a knock-on effect, as being able to go into Innocent Sin blind makes playing that game way better as well. Nowadays this isn't an issue though. I know the idea in Innocent Sin was to forget everything to save the world, but the way you get the best ending is kind of sad, and I respect it for that. Especially with the final screen of Innocent Sin, giving that hope of a happy ending, which never comes to be in Eternal Punishment. In my opinion, play Innocent Sin first to get the most out of Eternal Punishment. If you made it to the end, thank you for watching this far. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and let me know your thoughts on Eternal Punishment in the comments below. See you next time in our Persona Compendium with the start of a new era for Persona.